Hi there, I'm Tatiana Mejia. I'm passionate about cooking and traveling. I found the perfect way to blend both passions by creating the very first gastronomic tourism agency in Latin America. Welcome to Bites and Sights, where we explore the world through its flavors, traditions, and local communities. Let's dive into the heart of gastronomic tourism, a delicious way to experience culture, connect with people, and truly get a taste of a place. Welcome to a brand new season of Bites and Sides, where we dive even deeper into that delicious intersection of culture, cuisine, and conscious travel. And we're kicking things off with an episode that's packed with info. Yep, we're talking about the less glamorous stuff: documents, visas, travel requirements. But hang on, don't go anywhere because this isn't just red tape. This is your first step toward experience Colombia's most authentic culinary treasures, from Afro-Pacific ceviches to Andean sancochos. Because, let's be honest, without the right paperwork, there's no bandeja paisa, no tamales tolimenses, no wandering through local markets, or tasting those traditional dishes we're all craving. This episode, it's like the first bite before the main course. Quick, but absolutely necessary. I'm going to walk you through a simple update guide on everything you need to know if you're thinking about coming up to Colombia with a hungry heart and an open mind. We'll talk about entry requirements, the different types of visa depending on what kind of traveler you are, can't miss food festival, and a few tips to help you steer clear or misleading info out there. Traveling solo, coming just for fun, or maybe with a culinary or research project in mind, all of that matters when you're crossing the border. And we're here to help you do it legally, safely, and consciously. So if Colombia's on your radar for a gastronomic adventure, this episode is your first checking. Grab your passport, something to take notes, and that hunger for culture that brought you here. Let's get started. And now let's get started to the heart of this episode. We already know that traveling to eat means opening yourself up to new flavors and experiences, but it also meaning prepare. And I'm not just talking about packing your bags. I'm talking about something that might sound kind of boring, but it's actually the real starting point of any unforgettable food journey, knowing how to enter Colombia. Now, don't worry. This isn't a podcast about immigration or embassies. What I want to give you today is a practical, no stress guide so you can land in Colombia without surprises and with enough time to grab a freshly fried arepa de huevo at the Cartagena airport. Trust me, it's worth arriving even earlier for that. Here's the thing. When we dream about traveling for food, we picture a seaside fish, a grandmother cooking over an open flame, or a market full of fruits with names we can't pronounce. But almost no one thinks about the part before all that, when we're all at home, double checking documents, Googling whether you need a pizza or not, and if you can pack that coastal cheese in your suitcase. And yet, that moment is part of the trip too. Is there one thing I have learned as a traveler and a food lover is that culinary experiences begin way before your first bite. So let's start with the basics. When you're exploring a country through its food, And I'm not talking about tourist restaurants. I mean the real kitchens, the ones in patios, side streets, markets, and festivals. You need to travel light on assumption, but heavy on information. And that includes knowing what requires to actually enter that country. In Colombian case, like I mentioned, many nationalities don't need a tourist visa. But here's the thing. You have to read the fine print because it's one thing to come for a week to chill in Cartagena and a whole other thing to plan a 3-month journey through Afro-Colombian kitchens along the Pacific coast. The first case, no problem. The second might raise some questions. For example, before flying into Colombia, you need to complete something called CheckMate. It's a quick online immigration form and you've got to fill it within 72 hours of entering or leaving the country. You can find it on Migración Colombia website or through their mobile app. And this to me is where what I call the art of intentional foodie travel without killing the spontaneity really kicks in. Let's go for what happened to me a few years ago. Landing in Bogota after a trip through Peru, my heart was full of native potatoes and Amazonian ceviches. And in my backpack, I had this tiny jar of charapita chili peppers, a gift from a Shibibo Conibo cook in Pucallpa. It wasn't just hot sauce. It had meaning. It carried a story, a community, a message of resistance. Well, customs saw it and told me I couldn't bring it undeclared plant products. That moment made me stop and think, how many stories get lost just because we don't know the rules? How many flavors get stuck in a suitcase? And I'm not just talking about chili peppers. I'm talking about everything we carry with us that tied to our roots. That's why I always say, beyond regulations, preparing yourself is also a form of respect. So when you choose Colombia as a food destination, you're not just picking a country on the map. You're stepping into 5 natural regions and over 80 living cultures, each with its own way of growing, cooking, and sharing food. In that context, understanding the way behind the rules isn't just ticking boxes, it's part of the experience. For example, if you're heading to the Colombian Amazon home to indigenous communities like Ticuna and the Yagua, you'll need to be vaccinated against yellow fever. And it's not just for your own safety, it's because these communities work with wild region specific ingredients and are in close contact with the jungle every day. Can you imagine getting there and not being able to enter because you didn't get a shot that literally takes 10 minutes? That kind of detail can mean the difference between an incredible experience and a major disappointment. Now, if you're allergic to eggs or over 60, you're exempted for the vaccine, but you'll need a medical note and proper ID to show that. Colombia is divided into 5 natural regions, as I said a few minutes ago. And this isn't just a geographical thing. It also reflects different ingredients, cooking styles, rhythms, and ways of seeing the world. Let's break them down. First up, the Andean region. This is the land of the Colombian Andes, and it's big on soups, root vegetables, and corn in all its glorious forms. Think about dishes like ajiaco santafereño, made with 3 types of potatoes, criolla, sabanera, pastusa, and the all-important huasca herb. Or mute santanderiano, a thick, hearty broth with corn, chickpeas, cassava, beef, pork, and sometimes even tribe. The most have ingredients: criolla potatoes, long green onions, peeled corn, and that achote base stew flavor. Next, we have to the Caribbean region, full of African, indigenous, and Arab culinary influence. It's a place of bold seasoning, fried treats, sweets, and coconut based dishes known as encocados. You'll find things like mullet rice with pollo limpio, eaten with coastal whey and pickled onions, or a rich coastal chicken sancocho, thick with jams and green plantains. Essential flavors here include dried fish, coastal suero, sweet chili peppers, and ripe plantains. One of my personal favorites. Third, the Pacific region, deeply Afro-Colombian and spiritual connected to the kitchen. The cuisine here is full of fresh herbs and fermented flavors. There's piangua encocado, a mollusk harvested by hand in mangroves, cooked in coconut milk with long onions. Or blue crab soup, served right into the shell and seasoned with herbs like chiraran. Key regions in this region: fresh coconut milk, turmeric, green plantains, piangua, crab, and arton plantain. Fourth region, Amazon. Here, cooking is ancestral and medicinal. Every ingredient has symbolic and spiritual value. You'll find cassave, a flatbread made from bitter yuca that needs to go through a detox process before it's edible. There's also tucupi, a deep black fermented spice sauce made from cassava. Must know ingredients including black pepper, farinha, toasted cassava flavor, copaçu, camu camu, and the famous mojojoy, a protein-rich larva often roasted and served with salt. Oh, of course, aguaje, please. And the last but not the least, the Orinoquian region. This is cattle country with open fires and a strong llanero culture. The star dish, mamona llanera. Young beef slowly roasted on wooden stakes. There are also hallacas, banana leaf wrapped pockets of stew, rice, olives, capers, and boiled eggs. Core ingredients are beef, cassava, plantains, chili peppers, chirel, and topocho. Now, when we talk about cuisines that use ingredients you can find anywhere else in the world, we're not exaggerating. In the Amazon, for example, there's an ingredient that only grows there, and there's part of entire community food heritage. Take mojojoy, a larva rich in protein and healthy fats, with a flavor that's kind nutty. You can eat it raw, roasted, or fried. And a fun fact, when it's fried, it tastes like peanut butter. Then there's copaçu, a fruit from the same family as cacao. It's just in juices, jams, and desserts, and its aroma is similar to white chocolate. Side note, head over the Instagram page of Haz tu Viaje Gourmet, where we recently featured one of the most unique and delicious ingredients, ají negro, a fermented chili pepper with yuca, which takes weeks to make, and it's used in tiny amounts and to add deep to broth. There's also farinha, that crunchy toasted cassava flavor served as a dry side or to add texture to soup. But these aren't just ingredients, they are medicine, identity, ritual. That's why many communities ask that they don't be removed from context or used without permission. Now, you understand what I meant early when I brought up the yellow fever vaccine, because this isn't the kind of food you eat every day. It's powerful, protected, and deeply cultural. We are setting out to explore a country through its food. And again, I'm not talking about typical restaurants, but real kitchens that exist in courtyards, side streets, market stalls, and rural homes. You need to know where to look. In Colombian, those places are very clear. The courtyards of Palenque homes, where home women cook over fire while singing and peeling plantains. The alleys of Getsemaní in Cartagena, where a señora hands you a yuca carimañola stuffed with coastal cheese straight through her window. Well, you must be saying, what is señora? A lady. The Basurto market, also in Cartagena, a perfect chaos of fresh fish, spices, drums, and improvised cumbia. The Plaza of la Perseverancia in Bogotá, where you can sample everything from Boyacá peanuts chili to Santander caldo de Castilla, all in one row. The Silvia Market in Cauca, where Misak indigenous farmers bring native potatoes and DM vegetables and multicultural corn to be sold. And there's more. There are also kitchens in the mountains, the savannas, the jungles, but to find them, you have to learn how to read the territory. You won't get to experience these treasures unless you plan your time in Colombia right. As a visitor, you can stay in Colombia for up to 180 days on a tourist visa. And this is why I always say, do your research before you go. I want to go back for a second to something very important. When we talk about protected or sacred foods, and how something should be touched or removed by outsiders, this isn't about excluding anyone. It's about respect. In Colombia, especially in indigenous and Afro-Colombian regions, food isn't just about nutrition. It's about territory, ritual, and heritage, like I mentioned earlier. Take yahe, also known as ayahuasca. It's not a culinary ingredient per se, but a sacred drink used in spiritual healing ceremonies by indigenous communities in the Amazon. Unfortunately, it's been over-commercialized by irresponsible tourism. No conscious food traveler should seek it without a guide or without understanding its sacred role. Then there's piangua, the black mangrove mollusk from the Pacific coast. It's only the harvest by women, most of them Afro-descendant. Piangua is a symbol of collective work and cultural resistance. But problems start when tourism creates demand that's not sustainable, ignoring harvest seasons and the ecosystem, and hunting the same communities that depend on it. Now, let's talk about muisca chicha. Yes, you can find chicha in Bogotá and other tourist spots, but in certain indigenous communities in Cundinamarca and Boyacá, it is still a ceremonial, homemade fermented drink. In those contexts, it's not something you just buy and sip. It's something you're invited to share, and drinking is without an invitation. It's considered inappropriate. So, whether you're at a fair, plaza, or in a rural area, don't be afraid to ask the magic questions. Can I try this? What's the story behind it? Because honestly, the answer will be richer than the dish itself. Now, earlier I mentioned a few food festivals, but let's go a little deeper into them and some other hidden gems on Colombian culinary calendar. Because if there's one thing Colombia does incredible well, it's celebrating through food. Let's start with Sabor Barranquilla. Held every held every August. It's one of the biggest and most diverse food festivals in Colombian Caribbean. Here you'll find traditional cooks from towns like Galapa, Usiacuri, and Palmar de Varela, making everything from cassava buns to icotea, turtle, stews, corozo, sweets, enjucados, and fraudy sancochos. Coastal suero, a kind of way, flows like wine, served with everything from empanadas and arepas to desserts. And it's not just about eating. Sabor Barranquilla also digs into culinary research. You can attend talks on the origins of coconut rice or learn about the Arab influence on Caribbean food through Syrian Lebanese migration. Then there's Festival Petronio Alvarez, also in August in Cali. While is the best known for Pacific music, the food section is a total flavor sanctuary. Try piangua, or a shrimp encocado, arroz atollado, smoked fish stew, or blue crab soup. And don't forget the drink arrechon, tomaseca, biche curao, aphrodisiac tonics made from sugarcane, herbs, and roots passed down from generations. But this isn't just a food festival. The women from the coast bring their pots, their stories, their songs. They cook by memory with straight backs and strong hands. Their joy, yes, but also resistance. The stove here is political. Next, let's head to the National Arepa Festival in Antioquia. Every September in Medellin and other towns in the region, the festival honors the many face of the arepa. Arepa de maíz pelado topped with hogao, cheese and butter, arepa de choclo with fresh cheese, even the Caribbean-style egg arepa, paisa edition. Yeah, a paisa edition. Can you imagine? This is the perfect chance to see how one food, the arepa, can represent thousands of identities. Like I mentioned last season, every region has its own version, its own way of making it, and its go to feeling. And finally, we have the Traditional Cuisine Festival in Popayán. This one is part culinary event, part cultural and academic gathering. You'll find traditional cooks, modern chefs, and food research all in one space, talking, reflecting, and of course, cooking. Try the empanadas caucano, a giant empanada filled with rice, potatoes, meat, and egg. Or sip on champús, a drink thick made from corn, pineapple, lulo, and cinnamon, served cold in a totuma. Popayán has been named a UNESCO Creative City of Gastronomy, and it shows things. This is where people cook and debate food culture and at the same time. Let me leave you with a practical list of things I always recommend before traveling to Colombia, with your heart full and your stomach ready. First thing, bring a little notebook. Jot down flavors, names, ingredients, cooking methods. You'll be surprised how it becomes your best souvenir. Record conversations with cooks, vendors, and farmers. Many of them don't have social media or books, but they can tell you more in 1 minute than a full documentary ever could. Don't underestimate street food. That's where the soul of the country lives. But watch closely, ask questions, and if you can, eat where the line is longest. Travel with a curious but cautious stomach. Don't dive straight into the wildest dish on day one or on your last day either. Save the most exotic stuff for the middle of your trip so your body will be more adjusted. Learn about protected or sacred ingredients. In some communities, certain foods aren't meant to be handled by outsiders. Always ask first. Connect with guides or agencies that understand the importance of food and culture together. Not every tour is designed for people who want to truly taste without their soul. Look for the ones that align with your values. Check local cultures calendars. Some events aren't even online. You might have to email the Department Cultural Institute, the Town Cultural Center, or the local market organizers. Sorry about that. A lot of these experiences are managed directly by the community and don't show up on major websites. If you're like me and you enjoy reading before your trips, here are some great picks. Colombia, Cocina de Regiones by ProColombia, a solid overview of products, techniques, and regional dishes. Antología de la Cocina Colombiana Tradicional, published by the Ministry of Culture. Los Sabores Perdidos, Cocinas Tradicionales del Caribe Insular, by Banco de la República. And if you're looking for music to match your trip, El Aguacero, by Toto la Momposina. Mi Buenaventura, by Petrona Martínez. La Piragua, by José Barros, or something more modern with Pacific roots. Chowkeep Town is a must. One of the most common mistakes travelers make is thinking Colombia's food is just one thing. But trust me, nothing could be further than from the truth. Colombia doesn't have one cuisine. It has many, and each one speaks its own language. Sometimes it's literally like indigenous village where Spanish isn't the main language, but more often it's language made of fire, sense, silence, and memory. In the Pacific, food is sung. In towns like Huapi or Tumaco, many women sing lullabies while cooking, and recipes are passed down like songs. What do they cook? Smoked fish stew, where the fish is the first roasted over flames and then simmer in coconut milk with red onions, sweet pepper, cumin, and cilantro. Sweet or savory jam cakes wrapped in bijao leaves. Crab broth, where the seafood is cleaned with salt and lemon before being boiled, with native herbs like chiraran or guandul leaves. Maybe you're asking about, I said a few minutes ago, cilantro. It is coriander. Sorry about that. Here, food isn't just eaten, it's celebrated. That's why ingredients like biche, a distilled sugarcane drink, are considered sacred. You have to be invited to drink it. Traditionally, only knowledgeable women were allowed to make it. In the plains, the llanos, the language of cooking is whistle. In Colombia's eastern plains, cooking isn't something you do in the kitchen. It happens outside, among horses, under the stars, with harp music and joropo playing in the background. Roasted beef is prepared over hours. The meat is hung on wooden racks, tiled around a bonfire rubbed with salt, garlic, and chili, and slowly cooked with sipping guarap. Dried meat, shared with a stoned isata with onions and served with yuca and rice. These are not appetizers or fancy desserts here, just abundance, simplicity, and deep respect for animal. And there are unwritten rules. Nothing gets wasted, and everything gets shared. In the Amazon, the language is silence. In places like Leticia, Arauca, or Mitu, food isn't requested, it's offered. Eating in communion. The flavors are deep, umami, and sometimes surprising to a city palate. Black tucupi might feel intense at first, but a single drop can completely transform a broth. Mocado fish, smoked over bijao leaves, has a firm texture and a earthy flavor. Mojojoy larvae are served with salt and lime, eating whole, crispy on the outside, soft on the inside. In these regions, the norm is to observe, wait, and never impose. That's why not every traveler is ready for this kind of food journey. But those who are open to it never come back the same. Many ingredients found in Colombia carry centuries of resistance, migration, mixing, and care. Here are a few that are worth knowing, not just for their flavor, but their stories. Let's start with the Arton plantain. It's the start of everything, from coastal fritters to aborrajado in the Valle and tapao in Chocó. In Colombia, we eat in green, rib, boiled, fried, in chips, mash, or in broths. It's cooked everywhere, but how it is used changed by region. In the Caribbean, it's fried with garlic. In the Pacific, it's cooked with coconut milk. In the Andes, it's sweetened with panela. And let's go further. Now let's talk about corn, especially the kinds grown in the Cundiboyacense highlands. It's boiled for hours with hash to soften it and remove the husk. Then it's used in arepas, wraps, soups, and fermented drinks like chicha. Corn isn't just food, it's connection between Colombia and other Andean cultures. Where there's corn, there's history. Next up, boca chico, a river fish found in the Caribbean and Orinoquia. It's roasted stew or made into sancocho. In towns like Ciénaga or Magangué, boca chico means celebrations. Its season often lines up with religious festival, and when it does, families cook it by the kilo. And when we can't forget the long green onion. It's not just another ingredient. It's a symbol of Colombian flavor. You'll find it in hogao, stews, soups, broths, and arroz atollado. And even though it seems humble, you notice it when it's missing. Believe me. So, what would a well-planned foodie trip through Colombia looks like? If someone asked me for the ideal route for a traveler coming to Colombia for the first time, hoping to eat deeply and without rushing, this is what I suggest. Bogotá and Cundiboyacense Highlands. Start at Plaza de la Perseverancia. Try ajiaco santafereño in Sopó. Sample fresh panela and farmhouse cheese in Paipa. The Caribbean. Cartagena, Barranquilla, and Santa Marta. Explore Basurto Market in Cartagena. Eat mullet rice, butifarra, guandú soup. If you're lucky, catch Sabor Barranquilla Festival. The Pacific, Buenaventura, and Tumaco. Follow the Encocado Road. Attend the Petronio Álvarez Festival if you can. Take cooking workshops with coastal cooks. Cauca and Popayán. Eat empanadas de pipián. Try champús in Atotuma. Visit during the traditional cuisine festival, if possible. Amazonia, Leticia, and Puerto Nariño. Try cassave, tucupi, and mojojoy. Attend workshops with indigenous experts. Respect the entire food cycle. The Llanos, Yopal, Villavicencio, Arauca. Go during Acoleo fiesta. Eat mamonas, ayacas, and pisillo under the stars. There's something I haven't mentioned yet, but it's really important. What more could you ask for that to enjoy this entire journey with peace of mind and a sense of safety in Colombia? Travel insurance isn't required to enter to the country, but highly recommended it. Not because I expected something bad to happen, but because it's just smarter to be prepared. Honestly, it's one of the best rules for enjoying any place. Always travel protected. Always have an assistance card with you. And remember, every stop should include a fair, a market, or an open kitchen. Don't just focus on restaurants. The most valuable moments often happen when there's no menu, where you are invited into the kitchen. One of the biggest things I learned earlier on in my travels, especially in small towns, is that food isn't taught through recipes. It's passed on through action. I can't count how many times I have shown up with my notebook, ready to take down measures and steps, expecting the cook to tell me exactly how much everything to use, and instead I get something completely different. What I receive is a dance, a way of watching the fire, a hand gesture with adding salt, a pause before stirring the pot. This happened with Doña Elvira in Palenque when she taught me to make rice with salted coconut and fried fish with patacones. I still remember her. I kept asking, how much of this? And when I do that, and yes, just smile and said, you can see it on the oil. I push again. How much salt? And she answered, whatever your body asks for the day, my dear. That kind of wisdom doesn't fit a cookbook or on Instagram. You learn it by watching, listening, and staying quiet. So let's go back to where we start. To travel to Colombia and eat well, you'll need to prepare more than just a suitcase. You need to know when the food first happens, how to reach the local markets, which roads are safe, which communities are open to sharing their food ways, how far in advance you have to complete your checkmate, and how long you're allowed to stay. And yes, you need to know when to ask for permission, because Colombian food isn't frozen in time. It's alive. It evolves. It gets influenced by the modern world, but also fights to preserve itself. If we want to approach it through the lens of conscious gastronomic tourism, we have to do it without rushing, without arrogance, and without trying to apply our urban or foreign logic to every situation. Let me give you an example. In Putumayo, in an Inca community in Sibandui, I was once offered a fermented chili sauce made with garlic, onions, and wild native peppers. But before I could taste it, they told me, this is served during the ceremony. Can I take a picture? I asked. Oh, and speaking of photos, please always ask before you take one. Don't just snap a shot for the sake of it. Ask if it is okay. They said yes, but first they told me, eat it, listen to it, understand it. It was one of the most intense chili sauces I have ever tasted, not just because of the heat, but because of the symbolic meaning. Over the years, I have learned something else too. Not everything sold as gastronomic really is. Many so-called food tours offer indigenous experiences that are stage filled with stereotypes or use sacred ingredients without context, just to attract tourists. But real gastronomic tourism isn't about trying weird foods. It's about understanding ways of life through cuisine. So I invite you as a traveler, a cook, a human who's walked through savannas, jungles, coasts, and mountains to choose carefully. Look for agencies, tours, roads, and communities that work with intention. And if you can find them, don't worry. Travel slowly, ask questions, listen, read, learn. And little by little, you'll see how the flavors open themselves to you. And if you come to Colombia, get ready. Get ready to eat standing up in a market while a vendor tells you how his grandmother used to peel corn with a stone knife. Get ready to have changua for breakfast in Bogota, chontaduro in Cali, carimañola in Cartagena, piranha broth in the Amazon, and even changurro in Guinea. Picture yourself sitting on a wooden bench, sipping corozo juice while watching a soccer game, or seeing an 88-year-old kid peel a plantain with more skills than any professional chef, or sharing a stove with women who don't measure ingredients, but cook with their whole heart. You'll hear a story before every bite, and suddenly you'll realize that their eating isn't just about filling your belly, it's about feeding your memory. Maybe you came thinking you tried Colombia's most famous dishes, bandeja paisa, ajiaco, arepa de huevo, and yes, you will. But if you travel with open eyes and an open soul, you'll find something much deeper. You'll find a cuisine that resists, that tells stories, that heals, and that sings. And this kind of food, it changes you. When you go back home, you'll never look at a rib plantain, a cup of corn, or a big pot the same way again. Because you'll know behind each one, there are stories, songs, silence, riddles, and memories. And that is the real gastronomic passport. You know what happens to me every time I finish a gastronomic trip? Of course, I think about everything I ate, but also can't stop thinking about everything it took me to get there. I'm not just talking about flights or packing a suitcase. I'm talking about the moment you check. Do I have my passport? Are my vaccinations up to date? Does this country require a visa? Do I need proof of an exit ticket? We tend to think those are just formalities, but no, they are actually the doors that allow us to enter a new world of flavors with respect. Colombia, for example, has its own rules, just like any country. If you're coming for tourism and you're from certain countries, you might not need a visa. But do you need a valid passport? You need to show that you're just passing through, that you know where you're going, and that you can support yourself while you're discovering its cuisine. Far from being a hassle, that can be your first gesture of respect toward a country that's opening the doors to you. Because here, in this land of purple corn, coffee planted with songs, and fish cooked in coconut milk, hospitality begins the moment you show up prepared. I always say, traveling while eating isn't just food tourism, it's a way of life. And if we want to be welcome into the cultures where a real food is made, into the community kitchens, into markets where no one's holding a camera, we need to show up humility and with our homework done. So today, instead of asking you to take notes, I want you to invite you to reflect. How do your trips begin? How do the type who just wings it Are you the type who just wings it? Or are you the kind of traveler who takes time to understand where you're going? Because if you planned your trip the way you'd plan a great recipe with care, quality ingredients, and enough cooking time, then I promise what you'll experience will be so much more than just a meal. And hey, if you know someone who dreams of coming to Colombia to truly savor it, share this with them. You might save them from a stressful moment at immigration. Or better yet, help them arrive just in time for a festival where a Pacific cook teaches them to make encocado with their own hands. I'd also really love to hear from you. I want to read your comments and now you to know what you think. What's the first thing you prep before a trip? You can reach me on Instagram or Facebook at Haz Tu Viaje Gourmet or through my website, where you'll find resources, experiences, and upcoming food trips we're putting together. Because sometimes what stays with you most after a trip isn't the fancy dish. It's the breakfast on the street corner in some little village, a reheated coffee and fresh arepa, because someone decided to invite you and you were ready to say yes. If you enjoyed this episode, I loved for you to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss what's coming next. And if you think this episode could inspire another traveler or food lover, go ahead and share it. Leave a comment or send it to someone who needs to hear it. It's one of the best ways to help more people discover this conscious way of traveling. And with it, we wrap up today's episode. Just remember, every trip, every bite is a chance to connect more deeply with the world around us. So wherever you are, don't stop exploring, tasting, and discovering. Because in the end, the best way to get to know a place is by eating it. We'll catch up in the next episode. Until then, keep traveling with an open palate and an open heart.